Can't you watch where you're going?" The voice cracked across the corridor like a whip. Adebayo Okafor lifted his eyes from the bucket he had just knocked over and found Folek Adeyemi's furious face inches from his. The spilled water spread across the polished marble floor of Horizon Enterprises headquarters in Lagos. "I'm sorry, madam," he murmured, crouching quickly to gather the cleaning supplies scattered across the floor. "It was an accident." And Folek laughed, but there was no humor in the sound, only exhaustion and deep irritation. "People like you always have excuses." Adebayo studied her face for a moment before bowing his head again. There were dark circles under her eyes, marks that even flawless makeup couldn't hide. The hand gripping her phone trembled slightly, and she squeezed it so hard the knuckles had gone white. Something was wrong, very wrong. For the past week, Adebayo had been here disguised as a contracted cleaning staff. Those days had been a devastating revelation about the very company he had built from scratch 15 years ago. He knew who Folek was, of course. Human Resources Director hired 2 years ago with excellent recommendations, impeccable resume, experience at multinational corporations. On paper, she was the perfect choice to modernize the department, and the numbers she presented to the board were consistently positive. But Adebayo had never seen how she really treated people under pressure. He had never come down from his comfortable office on the top floor to witness the reality on the ground. "Madam, I truly apologize," he said, keeping his voice calm as he set the toppled bucket upright. "I'll clean this up immediately." "Clean up." Folek's voice pitched up an octave, but there was more than anger there. Frustration barely contained despair. Something on the verge of exploding. "Do you know what time it is? I have a board meeting in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, and now I have to dodge this entire mess." Employees began appearing in doorways, curious. Adebayo saw a few exchange silent looks of understanding, as if they had witnessed scenes like this before. Others quickly averted their eyes and went back to their desks. Their body language was eloquent. They didn't want to get involved. "Look at you," Folek continued, pointing at Adebayo as if he were an offensive object. "Old clothes, sloppy appearance, always in the way of important people." She stopped abruptly, glanced at her phone as it beeped insistently, read something on the screen, and went even paler. "You don't understand," she said more to herself than Adebayo. Her voice came out strange, wavering between professional control and something close to hysteria. "No one understands what's at stake here. No one." Out of the corner of his eye, Adebayo saw Mama Chioma hurrying down the hallway with a squeegee and extra rags. The 60-year-old had panic stamped across her creased face. It was obvious she recognized the signs of what was about to happen. "Ms. Adeyemi, please," Mama Chioma panted. She'd sprinted from another floor. "Adebayo is new. He's still learning. It's my fault for not supervising better." "Learning?" Folek spun so fast she nearly tripped over her own heels. "No one learns anything here. No one cares about anything. I try to do everything right." She stopped mid-sentence, biting her lip hard, as if she had realized she was revealing too much. She breathed deeply several times, forcing control back into place. Adebayo could see what it cost her, the mask being reset piece by piece. "People like you," she began again, but now her voice was mechanical, emotionless, as if reciting a memorized script, "are why this company wastes resources. Inept, negligent, always causing problems and delaying those who actually work." More employees were gathering now. Adebayo recognized some faces. Ngozi from accounting, who greeted everyone. Emeka from sales, who left the restroom a mess and never said thank you when he found it clean. Amara from legal, who had once helped Mama Chioma carry a heavy bucket. All watched in silence, some visibly uncomfortable, others with that studied indifference of those who've learned not to get involved in conflicts with superiors. Adebayo observed, fascinated and horrified at once. There was something deeply disturbing about the scene. It wasn't just simple arrogance or casual contempt. It was someone disintegrating in public under an invisible weight. It was someone pushing downward a pressure that came from above. Then Folek did something no one expected. With a quick, almost desperate motion, she uncapped the water bottle she held and poured the entire contents over Adebayo's head. The icy liquid streamed through his hair, soaked his plain shirt, dripped to the floor, mixing with the water already spilled from the bucket. The cold was shocking, but not as shocking as the absolute silence that followed. Adebayo didn't move. He just stood there drenched, dripping, but what truly captured his attention wasn't the act itself. It was Folake's expression immediately afterward. Horror, pure and genuine horror at herself. For maybe 2 or 3 seconds, she froze completely, staring at the empty bottle in her hands, as if she couldn't understand how the object had gotten there, as if she couldn't process what she had just done. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth fell slightly open, and in that briefest moment, Adebayo saw not a cruel executive, but a person terrified by her own action. Then the mask returned, forced, artificial, transparent to anyone who knew how to look. "There," she said, but her voice came out strange, thin, almost robotic. "Now you have something real to clean. Maybe then you'll learn." She turned and strode quickly to her office. Yet Adebayo noticed details most people missed. She was visibly shaking and almost tripped again in her heels. And when her office door closed, he heard, or imagined he heard, a muffled sob. The silence that remained in the corridor was dense and uncomfortable, heavy as lead. Unbelievable. Did you see how she poured water on him? And she has no idea who he really is. If you're feeling your blood boil right now, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion. Drop a comment. What do you think Adebayo will do next? Will he fire her immediately, or does he have other plans? The next chapter reveals his shocking decision, and it will leave you speechless. Share this video with someone who needs to see that karma is real. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Employees began to disperse slowly, avoiding eye contact with Adebayo, with Mama Chioma, with one another, as if witnessing the incident had made them accomplices to something shameful. Mama Chioma approached with towels she brought, silent tears running down her cheeks. Her hands trembled as she offered the cloths to Adebayo. "My son," she whispered, barely controlling her voice. "She's getting worse. Every day it's harder to work here. Every day she becomes more, I don't know how to explain it, getting worse." Adebayo asked softly as he dried his face, "Has this happened before?" "Not like this. Never this bad." Mama Chioma looked around nervously, making sure no one else was listening. "But you need to understand something. She wasn't like this when she arrived. For the first few months, she even greeted us, asked our names. Once she helped me when I mixed up the wrong cleaning product." Adebayo stopped drying and looked at her. "What changed?" "I don't know exactly, but about a year ago, she started getting different, more tense, more nervous, working late every night, arriving earlier and earlier. Then the episodes began. Episodes like this, blowing up at people, yelling over small things. But later, you'd see her alone in her office with her head in her hands. It's like she's being crushed by something we can't see." Adebayo absorbed that as he wrung out his shirt. His brain worked quickly, processing what he had witnessed through a completely new lens. So it wasn't simply a cruel manager abusing power. There were layers, complexity, a story he didn't know. Suddenly, all the certainty about what he would do next began to crumble. The idea to go undercover had arisen weeks earlier and had seemed so simple at the time. Adebayo Okafor was the owner and president of Horizon Enterprises, a company that started in a small shop in Surulere and now occupied this gleaming tower in Victoria Island. But success had pulled him away from the day-to-day operations into boardrooms and investment meetings, international conferences, and strategy sessions. His company's culture had been important to him once. His own father had worked as a low-level clerk for decades, repeatedly passed over for promotion despite his intelligence and dedication. Treated as expendable, as less than, Adebayo had sworn that when he built his own company, things would be different. Dignity would be part of the foundation, not a luxury reserved for those at the top. But had he kept that promise? The rumors had been circulating for months. Complaints about toxic management, about a culture of fear. The employee satisfaction surveys showed disturbing trends. When an old friend from his university days, now a wealthy investor in Dubai, suggested the undercover idea. Adebayo had been skeptical at first, but the more he considered it, the more he realized he needed to see the truth for himself. And now here he was, dripping wet, with an entirely different mystery than he'd expected. "Thank you, Mama Chioma," he said, finally finishing dry himself. "You've been very kind." "You're a good boy," she said, patting his hand. "Don't let this get you down. We all have bad days." Adebayo smiled at her warmth. "I'll remember that." After changing into dry clothes from his locker in the janitorial closet, Adebayo was mopping the hallway when Folake's office door opened. She emerged looking composed again, though her eyes were slightly red. She walked past him without acknowledgement, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor as she headed toward the boardroom. 5 minutes later, Adebayo slipped into the observation room adjacent to the boardroom. It was a small space with one-way glass, typically used by assistants who might need to be called in during meetings. No one used it today, which gave him the perfect opportunity to watch. Inside the boardroom, the quarterly review was underway. The chief financial officer was presenting numbers that looked excellent on the surface. Revenue up 15%, cost down 7%, employee productivity increased by 11%. Folake's presentation was next. Her voice was steady, professional, as if the corridor incident had never happened. "As you can see from the HR dashboard, our initiatives have been extremely successful. Turnover is down significantly, and our workforce optimization program has increased output while reducing headcount by 8%. Adebayo watched the board members nod approvingly, but he noticed something else. When Folake clicked to the next slide, her hand trembled almost imperceptibly, and there was something off about those numbers. They didn't match what he'd been seeing on the ground. The mood among employees was tense, fearful. People worked late not because they were engaged, but because they were afraid. As Folake continued her presentation, Adebayo saw the board's chief director, Alhaji Ibrahim, ask a probing question about a discrepancy in one of her slides. For just a moment, panic flashed across her face before she recovered with a smooth explanation. Alhaji Ibrahim didn't look convinced. "Ms. Adeyemi, these retention numbers seem at odds with what I'm hearing from my sources and company. Can you explain that?" Adebayo watched as Folake's composed mask slipped for just a fraction of a second. "I'm not sure what rumors you're referring to, sir. The data speaks for itself. Data can be manipulated." Alhaji Ibrahim said flatly, "I want real answers, not pretty slides." Something clicked in Adebayo's mind. The pressure, the fear, the late nights. Folake wasn't just a bully. She was under extreme pressure herself, possibly falsifying reports, almost certainly hiding problems to meet impossible expectations. The meeting ended an hour later. Adebayo slipped out and returned to his janitorial duties, mind racing with what he'd learned. That evening, after everyone had left, he used his real ID to access the executive elevator and returned to his penthouse office. His assistant, Yejide, was waiting, concern etched on her face. "Sir, are you ready to end this undercover operation now? It's been a week. Surely you've seen enough." Adebayo looked out over the Lagos skyline, the lights of the city twinkling in the dusk. "Actually, I need one more day," he said. "But I need you to gather some information for me first. I want everything we have on Folake Adeyemi. Personnel file, performance reviews, even security logs of when she enters and leaves the building. And I need access to all the HR reports she submitted to the board for the past year." Yejide looked surprised but nodded. "May I ask why, sir? Is this about what happened today?" "The incident is already spreading through the company. Everyone knows she poured water on the new janitor." "Yes and no," Adebayo said, turning from the window. "I thought this exercise would show me who in my company was cruel and who was kind. I thought the lines would be clear. But I'm discovering that things are much more complicated than that. What will you do about Ms. Adeyemi?" Yejide asked. "People are saying she should be fired immediately." Adebayo's expression was thoughtful. "I'm not sure yet, but tomorrow everyone will know who I really am, and then we'll see what kind of leader I truly am." As the sun set over Lagos, Adebayo read the files Yejide had gathered. What he found troubled him deeply. The real story was more complex than he could have imagined, and the decision he would make tomorrow would determine not just Folake's fate, but the soul of the company he had built. Oh my goodness. He's been watching everything as the owner of the company, and Folake has no idea what's coming tomorrow. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion. Drop a comment. Should Adebayo fire Folake immediately, or is there more to her story that deserves a second chance? The next chapter reveals the shocking truth about what's really happening at Horizon Enterprises, and Folake's reaction when she discovers who the janitor really is. Don't miss it. Share this video and turn on notifications so you don't miss the big reveal. The next morning, Adebayo arrived at the office in his typical attire, a perfectly tailored navy blue suit from Lagos's most exclusive tailor, Italian leather shoes, and a wristwatch worth more than what most of his employees earned in a year. He stepped into the lobby of Horizon Enterprises and watched as security guards who had ignored him for a week suddenly snapped to attention. "Good morning, sir," they greeted enthusiastically, confusion evident in their eyes as they tried to reconcile the sophisticated Theo with the humble janitor they'd barely noticed. "Good morning," Adebayo replied pleasantly. "Is everyone in for the day?" "Yes, sir. Full attendance, sir." Adebayo nodded and headed for the elevator. His plan was simple but dramatic. He would call an impromptu all-staff meeting in the main auditorium. There, he would reveal his true identity and what he had learned, and he would confront Folake Adeyemi about yesterday's incident in front of everyone. As he rode the elevator to his penthouse office, his phone rang. It was his younger sister, Amara. "Bayo, are you still coming to dinner on Sunday? The children are asking about their uncle." Adebayo sighed. Family relationships had suffered as he built his empire. His sister lived just across Lagos, yet they barely saw each other. "I'll be there," he promised. "I've been busy with something important." "You're always busy with something important," Amara said, her voice carrying 15 years of disappointment. "This is different," he replied. "I think Papa would have been proud." There was a pause. "Really? That's not something I've heard you say before." Their father had died shortly after Adebayo's first major business success, leaving a complex legacy. The old man had worked his entire life for a British trading company in Lagos, always treated as less than his white colleagues despite his superior skills and education. He had instilled in his children a fierce pride and an awareness of dignity that bordered on obsession. "I'll tell you all about it on Sunday," Adebayo said. "I promise." After hanging up, he instructed Ujai to call the all-staff meeting for 10 a.m. Then he reviewed what he had learned about Folake Adeyemi from the files. She had indeed been an exemplary employee at first. Glowing reviews, innovative ideas, genuine concern for employee welfare. Then, about a year ago, something changed. Her reports to the board became increasingly detached from reality. Employee satisfaction metrics that looked perfect on paper contrasted sharply with increasing complaints to ombudsmen. Turnover was being hidden through creative accounting. Most tellingly, Folake had been arriving at 6 a.m. and leaving after 10 p.m. almost every day for months. Why? The answer was in the board minutes. Alhaji Ibrahim and several other board members had set nearly impossible targets for HR cost-cutting while maintaining growth. Folake had been caught in an impossible situation, deliver the impossible or lose her job, and rather than push back, she had begun to lie, to fake reports, and to push the pressure down onto her subordinates. At exactly 10 a.m., Adebayo walked into the packed auditorium. A murmur went to the crowd as employees recognized the new janitor, now dressed as the CEO. Folake sat in the front row, scrolling through her phone, oblivious to the mounting tension. "Good morning," Adebayo said into the microphone. The room fell silent instantly. "For those who don't know me, I am Adebayo Okafor, the founder and CEO of Horizon Enterprises." He paused, letting his gaze sweep over the audience. "But for the past week, many of you have known me as the new janitor who worked alongside Mama Chioma." The gasp that went through the room was audible. Folake's head snapped up, her phone forgotten as the blood drained from her face. Their eyes met, and Adebayo could see the exact moment when she realized what happened and what she had done. I decided to work undercover in my own company because I had heard disturbing reports about our culture, about how people were being treated. I wanted to see the truth for myself. Folake looked as if she might faint. Her hands gripped the armrest of her chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. What I discovered was both better and worse than I expected. Adebayo continued. I saw kindness from many of you. I saw dedication. I saw people supporting each other in small ways that management never notices. Several employees nodded, looking pleased. But I also saw fear. I saw people being treated as if they were less than human because of their position or their education or the work they do. I saw a culture where dignity, the very value this company was founded on, has become a luxury for those at the top. Now the room was utterly still, every person hanging on his words. Yesterday, something happened that I believe many of you witnessed. I was humiliated publicly by a senior manager of this company. All eyes turned to Folake, who seemed to be shrinking in her seat, her face a mask of horror and shame. Ms. Adeyemi, Adebayo said, his voice even, would you please join me on stage? For a moment, it seemed she might refuse, or flee, but then, with visible effort, Folake stood and walked slowly to the stage, each step visibly painful. When she reached Adebayo's side, she couldn't meet his eyes. Ms. Adeyemi, Adebayo said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Yesterday you poured a bottle of water over my head because I spilled a bucket. Do you remember that? Yes, she whispered, so quietly the microphone barely picked it up. What do you have to say about that now? Folake finally looked up, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. I'm sorry, sir. I had no idea who you were. I would never. Adebayo raised his hand, stopping her. That's exactly the problem, isn't it? You're sorry because I turned out to be the CEO. But would you be sorry if I had just been Adebayo the janitor? Would my dignity matter then? The question hung in the air. Folake had no answer. Let me ask you something else, Adebayo continued. Why did you do it? That's not a rhetorical question. I genuinely want to understand. Folake swallowed hard. I don't know. I was stressed. The board meeting, I was afraid. Afraid of what? She hesitated, glancing toward Alhaji Ibrahim and the other board members who were watching from the side of the auditorium. Ms. Adeyemi, Adebayo said gently, this is a moment for truth. Whatever you say, I promise you will not lose your job today. So please tell us, afraid of what? Something in his tone seemed to break through her defenses. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Afraid of failing. Afraid of not meeting the targets. Afraid of disappointing everyone. Her voice cracked. The board set impossible goals. Cut costs by 30% while improving retention by 15%. It can't be done, not without lying about the numbers. I've been falsifying reports for months, and I'm terrified of being found out. Alhaji Ibrahim stepped forward, his face darkening. Mr. Okafor, this is outrageous. She's admitting to fraud. Yes, she is, Adebayo agreed calmly. But I believe the fraud began with impossible demands from this board. I reviewed the minutes. Alhaji, the targets you set couldn't be achieved without either miracle or deception. You created this situation. Murmurs rippled through the audience as employees realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Their CEO publicly challenging the powerful board. Ms. Adeyemi made a terrible mistake yesterday. Adebayo continued. But it was a symptom of a deeper problem. A toxic culture doesn't start at the bottom. It flows from the top, from me, from the board, from our senior leadership. He turned back to Folake. What you did was wrong. Unacceptable. But I also believe in second chances when someone has the courage to admit their mistakes and change. So here's what's going to happen. The entire auditorium leaned forward, everyone holding their breath for the verdict. Incredible. He just put Folake and the board members on the spot in front of everyone. If your jaw is on the floor right now, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion. Drop a comment. What do you think Adebayo's decision will be? Will he give Folake a second chance, or is this all a setup for an epic public firing? The next chapter reveals his shocking plan that will transform the entire company. You won't believe what happens next. Share this video with anyone who's ever been mistreated at work. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the dramatic next chapter. Ms. Adeyemi will be taking a 1-month paid leave, effective immediately. Adebayo announced at a hushed auditorium. During this time, she will work with external consultants to develop a new HR framework for Horizon Enterprises, one based on transparency, realistic goals, and dignity for all employees regardless of their position. Folake stared at him in disbelief, clearly having expected termination. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. When she returns, Adebayo continued, she will implement this new framework with the full support of my office. Her first task will be to conduct a genuine employee satisfaction survey, with results reported directly to me, not filtered through layers of management trying to make the numbers look good. He turned to address the board members directly. And as for our board, I'm calling an emergency meeting this afternoon. We will be revisiting our performance targets for all departments and setting new standards that don't require our managers to choose between lying and being fired. Alhaji Ibrahim's face had darkened to a dangerous shade of red. Mr. Okafor, you are overstepping. The board sets the targets, not you. Actually, Alhaji, as a majority shareholder, I have the final say. Adebayo replied calmly. And I'm saying that we will no longer sacrifice our people's dignity and integrity for unrealistic growth numbers. The tension in the room was electric. Everyone knew they were witnessing a power struggle that would determine the future of the company. Now, Adebayo addressed the entire staff again. I have learned many things during my week as a janitor. I've learned who greets the cleaning staff and who doesn't. I've learned who leaves messes for others to clean up. I've learned who says thank you and who doesn't even make eye contact. People throughout the audience looked uncomfortable, wondering if they had been among those who had ignored the CEO when he was disguised as a janitor. But most importantly, Adebayo continued, I've learned that dignity isn't just a word to put in our mission statement. It's something we have to practice every day, with every interaction, at every level of the company. He gestured for Mama Chioma to join him on stage. The elderly woman approached hesitantly, clearly overwhelmed by suddenly being the center of attention. Mama Chioma taught me more about leadership in 1 week than I've learned in 15 years of running this company, Adebayo said, putting his arm around her shoulders. She showed me that true dignity comes not from your position or your salary, but from how you treat others, especially those who could do nothing for you in return. Tears streamed down Mama Chioma's weathered face as the audience broke into spontaneous applause. Starting today, we are implementing a new program called Dignity at Work. Every employee, from the board to the newest janitor, will participate. And to show how serious we are about this, I will be taking several additional steps. He outlined his plan, a significant pay raise for all support staff, a new ombudsman's office that would report directly to him, and most surprisingly, a rotation program where executives would spend 1 week each year working in frontline or support roles. If you think that sounds uncomfortable, Adebayo said with a smile, imagine how I felt mopping floors after 15 years behind a desk. Laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking some of the tension. One last thing, he said, his expression growing serious again. To those of you who witnessed Ms. Adeyemi pour water over me yesterday and did nothing, who watched in silence as someone was humiliated, I want you to ask yourselves, what kind of company do you want to work for? One where we stand by while colleagues are mistreated? Or one where we have the courage to speak up, even when it's difficult? With that, he dismissed the meeting. As people filed out, buzzing with excitement and shock, Adebayo asked Folake to come to his office. Alhaji Ibrahim attempted to join them, but Adebayo politely but firmly told him to wait for the board meeting later. Once they were alone in his penthouse office, Adebayo gestured for Folake to sit. She perched on the edge of the chair, looking like she might bolt at any moment. Why didn't you fire me? She asked finally. After what I did, everyone expects it. It would have been justified. Adebayo leaned back in his chair, studying her. Do you know why I started this company, Ms. Adeyemi? To make money? To be successful? Those were factors, yes. But the real reason was my father. Adebayo stood and walked to the window, gazing out at Lagos stretching to the horizon. He worked for 40 years at a British company. Brilliant man. Spoke 5 languages. Could solve problems no one else could touch. But they never promoted him. Never gave him the respect he deserved, because to them, he was just another African who should be grateful for any job. He turned back to face her. He died bitter, not because he hadn't made money, though he hadn't, but because he'd never been treated with basic human dignity. I swore that when I built my own company, things would be different. And then I became exactly what he hated. Folek said softly, "Yes," Adebayo agreed, "but not because you're inherently cruel. You became that way because of a system that was crushing you from above, and rather than push back, you pushed down." Folek nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm giving you a second chance," Adebayo continued, "because I believe you can change. More than that, I believe you can help me change this entire company. The woman who helped Mama Chioma when she mixed up cleaning products. That's the real you. That's who I want working here." For the first time, a genuine smile crossed Folek's face. "Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you. I know you won't. But let's be clear, this isn't just about me. It's about creating a company where everyone, from the CEO to the newest janitor, is treated with respect." After Folek left, Adebayo had barely a moment to gather his thoughts before Yajid informed him that Alhaji Ibrahim was demanding to see him immediately. The board meeting that afternoon was contentious, to say the least. Several members, led by Alhaji Ibrahim, argued vehemently that Adebayo was undermining the company's profitability with his sentimental approach. "We're not running a charity, Okafor," Alhaji Ibrahim thundered. "We're running a business. Your father's experiences are unfortunate, but they have no place in our strategy discussions." Adebayo remained calm. "Actually, they do, because our strategy was built on a lie. The lie that we can treat people as disposable resources and still expect them to give their best." He presented data from companies around the world showing that dignified treatment of employees correlated strongly with long-term profitability and stability. "You're asking us to sacrifice short-term gains for a philosophical experiment," another board member complained. "I'm asking you to build a sustainable company rather than one that looks good on paper while rotting from within," Adebayo countered. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that battle lines had been drawn. Several board members supported Adebayo's vision, while others, led by Alhaji Ibrahim, remained deeply skeptical. "This isn't over," Alhaji Ibrahim warned as they adjourned. "The shareholders will hear about this." "I'm counting on it," Adebayo replied with a smile. As a majority shareholder, he knew he would ultimately prevail, but the fight would not be easy. That evening, exhausted but satisfied, Adebayo returned to his penthouse apartment in Ikoyi. He poured himself a glass of palm wine, his father's favorite drink, and stood on his balcony watching the sun set over Lagos Lagoon. His phone rang. It was Amara. "I heard what happened today," she said without preamble. "It's all over social media. CEO works as janitor, confronts toxic management. Is it true?" "Yes," Adebayo replied. "All of it." There was a pause. "Papa would have been proud." Amara said finally, her voice thick with emotion. "Really proud." Adebayo felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying for years. "I think so, too. Are you still coming for dinner on Sunday?" "Absolutely. In fact, I was thinking maybe we could make a weekly thing. Life is short, and I've missed too much of my nieces' and nephews' childhoods already." "They'd love that," Amara said, sounding surprised and pleased. "And so would I." After hanging up, Adebayo sipped his palm wine and reflected on the day's events. He had set in motion changes that would transform his company, and perhaps even his industry. It wouldn't be easy. Alhaji Ibrahim and his faction would fight him every step of the way. Some employees would resist the new culture. There would be setbacks and compromises. But for the first time in years, he felt aligned with his original purpose, not just making money, but creating something meaningful, something his father could have been proud of. His phone beeped with a message. It was from Folek. "Thank you for the second chance. I won't waste it." And I'm sorry, not just because you turned out to be the CEO, but because what I did was wrong no matter who you were. Adebayo smiled. The transformation had begun. Wow! Did you expect that? Adebayo gave Folake a second chance instead of firing her. And he's completely transforming the company. If you're inspired by his leadership, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion. Drop a comment. Do you think Adebayo made the right decision? Will Folake really change? And what about Alhaji Ibrahim and the board members who oppose him? The final chapter reveals how this all plays out, and there's a surprise no one sees coming. Share this video with someone who needs to see what true leadership looks like. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the powerful conclusion to this incredible story. 6 months had passed since the day Adebayo revealed himself to Horizon Enterprises. The transformation had not been easy, but it had been profound. As he stood at the podium in the company auditorium, looking out at the assembled employees and board members, he could hardly believe how much had changed. The company's physical appearance was the same. The gleaming towers still dominated Victoria Island's skyline, but the atmosphere inside was unrecognizable. "Welcome, everyone," Adebayo began, "to our first Dignity Day celebration." The audience applauded enthusiastically. Dignity Day had been Folake's idea, a company-wide event to mark the new direction of Horizon Enterprises and celebrate the progress they had made. 6 months ago, I stood on this stage after spending a week disguised as a janitor. Adebayo continued. What I learned during that week changed me, and it changed our company. Today, I want to share with you the results of that transformation. He clicked to the first slide of his presentation. It showed the financial results for the past 2 quarters. There had been a dip initially, as they absorbed the cost of higher wages for support staff and invested in the new initiatives. But the most recent quarter showed a surprising upturn. As you can see, our profits took a hit when we first implemented the Dignity at Work program. The board, he nodded toward Alhaji Ibrahim, who sat with neutral expression, warned me this would happen. And they were right. But look at the most recent data. The productivity metrics were remarkable. Absenteeism down 60%. Turnover reduced by 45%. Customer satisfaction up by 28%. And most surprisingly, the last month showed a 15% increase in revenue compared to the same month the previous year. It turns out, Adebayo said with a smile, that when people are treated with dignity, they do better work. Who could have imagined? Laughter rippled through the audience, along with applause. But numbers don't tell the whole story, he continued. The real changes are the ones you can't easily measure. The way people greet each other in the morning, the collaboration across departments, the willingness to speak up when something isn't right, knowing you'll be heard rather than punished. He gestured to Folake, who sat in the front row. I'd like to invite our HR director, Ms. Folake Adeyemi, to share what she's learned during these past 6 months. Folake walked to the stage amid generous applause. Gone was the tense, fearful woman who had poured water over a janitor's head. In her place stood a confident professional with a warm smile. Thank you, Mr. Okafor, she began. 6 months ago, I was at the lowest point in my professional life. I had become someone I didn't recognize, someone who would humiliate another person just to feel a moment of control in a situation where I felt powerless. She paused, looking out at the audience. The easy path would have been for Mr. Okafor to fire me. Everyone expected it. I expected it. Instead, he chose a harder path for both of us. He chose to believe that I could change, that the company could change, that we could build something better together. Folake outlined the changes they had implemented, the realistic performance targets, the open-door policy for complaints, the rotation program that had executives working in frontline roles, the substantial pay raises for support staff, which had actually saved money in the long run by reducing turnover. But the most important change, she concluded, has been in how we see each other, not as job titles or functions, but as human beings deserving of respect. I've learned that dignity isn't a luxury we can afford only when things are going well. It's the foundation that allows us to weather the hard times together. As Folake returned to her seat amid enthusiastic applause, Adebayo returned to the podium. His next announcement would surprise everyone. Today, I'm proud to announce the launch of the Dignity at Work Institute, he said. This will be a separate nonprofit organization, funded by Horizon Enterprises, dedicated to promoting workplace dignity throughout Nigeria and beyond. The Institute will offer training, consulting, and legal support to both employees and companies striving to create more humane work environments. Murmurs of surprise and approval ran through the audience. And I'm even more proud to announce that the Institute's first executive director will be someone who understands dignity better than anyone I know. He gestured to the side of the stage. Mama Chioma, would you please join me? The elderly cleaning woman walked slowly to the stage, resplendent in a new, colorful Ankara dress. The audience rose in a standing ovation that brought tears to her eyes. Mama Chioma will work part-time at the Institute, while continuing her role here for those who still want her wisdom, Adebayo explained. Her first task will be to develop a training program for executives about what dignity looks like from the bottom up. Thank you, sir. Mama Chioma said when applause finally died down. I never went to university, but I have a PhD in being treated like I'm invisible. I know what it feels like, and I know how to help others see what they've been missing. After the ceremony concluded, Adebayo found himself surrounded by well-wishers, including several board members who had initially opposed his changes. Even Alhaji Ibrahim approached, albeit with reserved expression. The numbers for this quarter are impressive. Okafor, the older man, admitted grudgingly, I still think your methods are unorthodox, but I can't argue with results. Thank you, Alhaji, Adebayo replied with a genuine smile. Coming from you, that means a great deal. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Adebayo found Folake standing alone by the window, looking out at the Lagos skyline. Quite a day, he said, joining her. Yes, she agreed. I keep thinking about where I was 6 months ago and where I am now. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful you saw me at my worst. It forced me to confront what I was becoming. We all have moments we're not proud of, Adebayo replied. The question is what we do afterward. Folake turned to him. I've been offered a position with a multinational corporation. Triple my current salary, impressive title, corner office. Everything I thought I wanted when I first joined Horizon. Congratulations, Adebayo said, trying to hide his disappointment. When do you leave? I don't, Folake said with a smile. I turned it down. The work we're doing here is more important than any title or salary. Adebayo felt a surge of respect for her. I'm glad to hear it. We're just getting started. As they parted ways, Adebayo received a text message from Amara. Children can't wait to see their favorite uncle tomorrow. Ifo Riro and pounded yam on the menu. He smiled. The weekly family dinners had become the highlight of his week. His relationship with Amara was healing, and he was finally getting to know his nieces and nephews. They didn't care that he was a successful CO. They just loved having an uncle who played football with them and told them stories about their grandfather. The next day, Sunday, brought another milestone. As Adebayo played with the children in Amara's garden, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a name he hadn't seen in 15 years. Helen, his estranged older sister. Bayo, she said when he answered, her voice tentative. I saw you on the news. The story about what you did at your company. It reminded me of Papa. Helen, he said, emotion making his voice thick. It's been too long. I know. That's my fault. After Papa died and we fought over the inheritance, I said things I shouldn't have. Adebayo remembered the bitter argument. Helen had accused him of abandoning their father in his final years, focusing on building his business instead of spending time with the dying man. The accusation had stung because there was truth in it. We both did, Adebayo acknowledged, but that's in the past. Is it? Helen asked, because what I saw you doing with your company, putting people first, caring about dignity, it's exactly what Papa taught us, and it made me realize you understood him better than I thought. I'm still learning, Adebayo admitted. It took me disguising myself as a janitor to really understand what he tried to tell us all those years. Well, Helen said, I'm calling to ask if we could try again, as family. I'd like nothing more, Adebayo said, watching Amara's children play. In fact, I'm at Amara's right now for Sunday dinner. Why don't you join us? Bring your husband and children. There's plenty of Ifo Riro to go around. Helen's relieved laugh was the sweetest sound he'd heard in years. 1 month later, Adebayo organized a special event to mark the official launch of the Dignity at Work Institute. The venue was not Horizon's gleaming corporate headquarters, but a community center in Mushin, the working-class neighborhood where he and his siblings had grown up. As he stood before an audience of business leaders, government officials, employees, and community members, Adebayo felt a sense of completion. My father used to say, "Success isn't what you accumulate, it's what you give back," he began. For too many years, I measured success by the size of my company, the height of our building, the figures in our annual report. I forgot what really matters. He gestured around the room. What matters is this, that every person who works for a living is treated with basic human dignity, that no one has to check their humanity at the door when they go to work, that we build companies that don't just create wealth, but create worth for everyone involved. From the audience, Mama Chioma beamed proudly. Beside her sat Folake, who had become one of the Institute's most passionate advocates. In the back row, Helen and Amara sat together, heads close in conversation, healing their own long-standing rifts. The journey we begun at Horizon Enterprises is just that, a beginning. Adebayo concluded. We'll make mistakes. We'll face challenges. But we will never again forget that at the heart of every business decision is a simple question. Are we honoring the dignity of the people who make our success possible? As applause filled the room, Adebayo felt a peace he hadn't known in years. He had built a successful company. Yes, but now he was building something even more valuable, a legacy his father would truly be proud of. In the months and years that followed, the Dignity at Work Institute would grow to influence workplaces throughout Nigeria and beyond. Horizon Enterprises would continue to thrive, proving that profit and human dignity could go hand in hand. And Adebayo Okafor, once known only as a successful businessman, would become known for something more meaningful, a leader who remembered what truly matters. It had taken a week disguised as a janitor and a moment of humiliation to remind him of his father's most important lesson. That true success lies not in what you accumulate, but in how you treat others along the way. What an incredible ending. Adebayo didn't just transform his company. He healed his family too. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion. This powerful story shows us that true leadership means treating everyone with dignity, no matter their position. Drop a comment. What was your favorite part of this story? Did it inspire you to make changes in your own life? Share this video with someone who needs this powerful message today. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss another amazing story from AfricanTales by Zion. Thank you for watching. Until next time,